event. I think we're hoping to have it up by 10 a.m. GMT tomorrow morning. So if you have to drop off the session for any reason, or that you've got some colleagues that may be interested, please point them in that direction. Everyone that's registered for the event will also receive the resources from each of the speakers' presentations. So if you want to share these with any colleagues, then feel free to do so. It may help you follow along with the recording afterwards. So a little bit about me. I'm one of the data school consultants at the Information Lab here in London. I'm part of the 12th cohort of the data school, known as DS12. I've been working with Tableau for around about 18 months now. So in my day job, I work with the whole Tableau product suite, but I particularly enjoy using Tableau Prep. And I think, as I've mentioned before, it's a product with a bright future and it's developing really rapidly. Aside from using Tableau Prep in the workplace, I've also participated in prepping data, which has helped me really develop and improve my skills further. This is a community scheme that was set up just over a year ago by Carl Alchin and Jonathan Allenby. They recently added Jenny Martin, who's speaking today, and Tom Prowse to their team. What happens with this challenge is a new challenge is sent out each week. So you'll start with a data source or a couple of data sources, and you've got to use Tableau Prep to manipulate the data to achieve a desired output. The solution to the challenge will then be posted the following week, and then you can compare your solution to the final solution they provide, or with other user solutions. I'd highly recommend getting involved in this, no matter how experienced or not you may be with Tableau Prep, because it's a great place to further harness your skills outside of the workplace, and it's a great opportunity to learn from others. Just a few things before we get started. So 2 years ago, when Tableau Prep was first released, there was a complimentary 2-year Tableau Prep Builder license that was provided to customers that were subscribed to the old desktop legacy license scheme. So from the 30th of June onwards this year, these Tableau Prep licenses will cease to exist. Tableau Prep Builder will continue to be available to customers via the new subscription model. So if you have a Tableau Creator license, then you've no need to worry about this. But if you've got one of the old desktop legacy licenses, then you'll need to upgrade come the end of June. You can check the impact of this by looking at the My Keys tab in your portal. And if you want to keep Tableau Prep, so more information will be shared with you to your portal admin, which includes instructions on how to keep Tableau Prep. And you can contact your account management team for more information about converting your licenses. So enough from me, we'll move on to the sessions. We've got 4 great speakers in store for you today. So we've got Kate, Josh, and Jenny, who are going to discuss some experiences they've had with Tableau Prep. And then we're going to finish off with Rahim, who's the head of engineering for Tableau Prep. And he's going to discuss the Tableau Prep journey and showcase some of the new and upcoming features of the product. After each session, the speakers are going to answer a few questions. We've got a lot of participants in here today, so we're only going to have the opportunity to answer a few, but we'll pick out some of the key questions, and then any questions that don't get answered, I'd advise you to post them on the Tableau community forums, or if they're specific to the talk themselves, I'm sure some of the speakers will be happy for you to reach out to them afterwards and they'll answer some of those questions for you. So let's get into the talks themselves. I'm going to hand over to Kate now, who's going to talk through an experience she had transforming an employee hierarchy using Tableau Prep. So Kate, if you'd like to take over, please.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. I think I need you to stop sharing. Awesome. All right. So hello, everyone. Just give you a quick background on who I am. So I'm Kate Brown. I live just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm a business intelligence manager at Comcast. I've been using Tableau Desktop for about 5 years. I started with Prep back when it was Maestro and beta testing, And then I've been using it pretty regularly since it was released. Outside of using Tableau, outside of work, I'm obsessed with golf. So anyone who follows me on Twitter or Tableau Public probably guessed that already. I also enjoy traveling and reading. And I live in Quincy, Mass with my husband and our rescue Sharpei, who is really the queen of the universe. So in this example today, what I'm going to walk through is a real life example I had recently where I have an employee hierarchy, and the way that it's structured is it's going to have your immediate leader as your level 1 and work up the chain. And the request that I got was to reverse it. So for everyone, the level 1 would be the CEO of the company. So what I did was mocked up some fake data for a fake company. This is prep for those of you who haven't seen it before. And what I'm going to do is just start building out the flow. So I've already set my connection. And what I'm going to do now is anytime you're in prep, when you see that plus symbol, that's where you're going to insert some sort of action. So the first thing I want to do is hit a clean step. And we're going to take a look at the data that we have. So we have an employee ID, their name, their email, department, their role. And then as we scroll across, we can start to see the way that the data comes in is it's got an email address for the level 1 manager, level 2, level 3, level 4. And I think in this fake data, I went out to level 6. So we can see if we come over here and we just look for our CEO. So our CEO is Parry. And when we look here, we can see Parry showing up in all different places. And what we need is for Parry to be in level 1. So this first step, I'm not going to do anything with. I'm just going to use this as kind of an inspection of the data. But a couple of things that I like to do when I'm building out anything in prep is the first thing I like to do is add an aggregate, just so I know and have a quick, easy way to see how many rows I started with. So an aggregate is going to be where you do some sort of function summarizing the data. So what we're going to do is just grab our number of rows, drag that out to our aggregated field, and we've got 122 records. So I'm just going to call this my initial count. And then I can rename this, and we'll just call this initial clean. I like to recommend that you actually kind of have good labels in for your steps, and you can actually add descriptions as well. So I'm going to call this input. And for the description, I'm going to say this is the file we get from HR. And the reason I like to do this is if you share this with anyone or you win a gazillion dollars and you decide not to go back, someone's going to have to pick up your work. So the more you can document what you're doing, the easier it is for someone to pick that back up. And so we'll just rename this initial count. Okay. And when I come back over here, when I was building this out, what I thought was great was when I looked at it, I can see that I've got level numbers in my titles. So initially I'm like, I can do something with this to figure out how to reverse it. But what I want to do is I want to collapse these. So I don't want my management levels to be across in columns. I want to have one column and move everyone into a row. And prep makes that really easy. So if I come back to my plus and I grab the pivot, what I'm going to do is reshape my data. And we've got two options to reshape. We can either do columns to rows or rows to columns. For this, we're going to do columns to rows. And there's this great option here that we can do a wildcard. So when I click on this, all of my fields have the same name. They all start with level space. So I can type in level space, hit enter, and it's going to automatically pick up all of those fields. So now I can rename this as move levels to rows. And then add another step. And then what I can see here is that I've got some nulls, which is going to make sense, right? So let's just look at Adrian here. So Adrian reports right into Parry, so she doesn't have a level 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So I don't need the nulls in this case. So I'm going to just right click on this and I can easily exclude anything that's a null. And now I just have the levels where there is a manager populated in there. So I'm going to just rename this step as create Let's actually call this clean shape. So now the next thing that I want to do is, in order to see where Patty falls, I need to know what the maximum level is for each employee, because that's where Patty is going to be in the way that I have my file. So I can do that by adding an aggregate, and I'm going to bring over my employee email. And actually, I'm going to jump back here. I'm going to rename this. Actually, I went a step too far. I'm going to remove that, and we're going to actually clean this. So what I want to do is I actually want to pull this number out here, and then I'll be able to get the maximum level. So the easiest way that I can do that is to click on the three dots here, and this is going to open up a new menu, and I've got some clean options that are built in. So I could probably do a regex to just grab the number out, but I'd rather point and click because it's a whole lot easier. So I can clean this, and one option I have is to remove the letters. So when I do that, I'm going to be left with just the numbers. And then I know that I had spaces in there, so I'm going to come back and I'm going to clean, and I'm going to remove all of the spaces. And now I can rename this MGMT level number. And what I can also do is change this. So right now, I can see that this is a string with the ABC. All I need to do is click on that. It opens up a menu, and I can quickly change the data type to a number. So now I can add my aggregate. And what I can do is bring my employee email back in and my management number level over here. And I can change this by clicking over here. That's where you're going to be able to change the aggregation type that you want to do, and I'm going to get the maximum. And now what I can do is change this to max management level. And I can call this get max level. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to bring this back to my data over here, because I'm going to compare what my management level is here with my initial with the max. So to do that, I can click on the step before, hold down my mouse, and drag it over the plus symbol. And you'll see I have two options that say union and join. When that box turns orange that you can see behind it, I just released my mouse, and that's going to create a join for me. Now I like to organize my flow, so I'm just going to move this join step down here so it looks kind of symmetrical. And in the join panel, it's automatically detecting that my employee email exists in both of my data sources that I'm joining. So it's going to default to that. If I didn't want to use that, I could change that. But in this example, it picked it up correctly. And then it's also using an inner join, which is fine because I know everyone from each one of these steps is in there together. So I don't need to do anything else with my join. And again, I'm going to add another clean step. And I'm just going to go back and say add max level. And now I can start to look at how I can get the max level to be level 1. So my thought was when I was building this, I can just do some math to subtract these and reverse it. So what I'm going to do is just create a calculated field. And I can click on this. I can select the field that I want to start with, and it will automatically populate it. And I'm going to subtract my max management level from my management level. And when I do that, I'm also going to want to add 1 to that because I want Patty to be level 1. And then I can do reverse level number. And then when I save that, you'll see I've got something new over here. So if we go and we look at Albert, we can say in the traditional management level, we had Brittany as his level 1. Now Brittany is level 5. So Patty was level 5 in the traditional, and now in my new one, Patty is back to number 1. So just verifying that that worked. So I can get rid of these fields that I don't need anymore. So I don't need my max level. I don't need the old level. And what I can do is just click on both of those and remove them. All of the changes that I'm making are going to be tracked over in this changes panel. So if you ever needed to add that back, I could just come over here and remove it. And now what I need to do is I need to then, after I've determined now that Patty is my level 1, I need to get my data back in this initial format with my levels going across as columns. So I want to create a field for this that looks just like it was over here, where it says level, the number, and the manager. So I'm going to come back over to my reverse level, and I'm going to create a calculated field, and I'm just going to start type. So we can type level, space, plus. Now this is a number, so I have to convert this to a string. And then I can do another plus, manager. And I can call this manager level label. And now I've got that new field. So I don't need this anymore. I can remove it. And we'll just take a quick scan through everything else. Oh, I have this from my join because it's going to add both of the fields. So I don't need that. And again, I can remove it. And we can do this as reverse level. And then to get my rows back into columns, I'm going to add another pivot. So I'm going to click the plus symbol again, add a pivot. And then for this, we're going to do our rows to columns. So I'm going to have my manager level label as the column heading. And I'm going to put my level manager as the field that we're going to aggregate. And for this, because it's a string, I can change this to the minimum. And now when I click the plus, I have another clean step, and we can see that I have that. So if we pick on Albert again, we can see Patty is our level 1. So I'm going to just reshape. We can call this move levels to columns. And can rename this as our final. Now what I want to do here is I want to check that I've got the same number of rows as I had initially. So if I add another aggregate here, I can come over here and see what I've got. And I've got 121, so I'm missing one person. So Patty is their CEO, and Patty doesn't have a boss, so she's not going to have a management level. So I can easily add her back in by just adding a clean step down here. Now I'm going to move it down here. And we're just going to keep it as Patty. So let's look for Patty. And there's Patty Reed, and I can keep only. And we can call this our CEO. And then what I can do is drag that over here. And instead of joining, I'm going to union. And now I can get rid of my table names. And we can do a quick check of the number of records. I can see here, I've got 122, which works as well. I like to add the aggregates because oftentimes I'm working with sample data. In this one, it works fine. But when you're working with sample data, you know, I like to add the aggregates, and then what I can do is export those out. You know, and I can clean this up, export it out, you know, change my columns, but essentially that's the way that I approached it. So Jack, are there any questions?
Thanks, Kate. It's really great to see a business use case of Tableau Prep and a challenge you've actually had to overcome in the workplace. So a question that's come in, it's not necessarily specifically about your workflow, but I feel like you're in a good place to answer it. Someone's asked that if you create the calculated fields in Tableau Prep for your data source, will this increase the performance of a dashboard if you would otherwise make the calculated field in the dashboard itself?
Yeah, I think anything that you can do upstream of desktop is a good thing. So I like to, you know, do as much as I can outside of desktop, just to have it, you know, get everything kind of situated first and then bring it in. I think the performance is better.
I'd agree with that. So just remember, guys, that when you're bringing the data source into Tableau Desktop, anything you do in Tableau Desktop then will impact the performance of the dashboard. But anything done that's before you bring the data source into the dashboard is not going to affect the performance of the dashboard.
Yeah, especially if you
question.
have a lot of complicated things, Jack, too, right? You know, the more that you can take out and do upstream, the better off you're going to be.
100%. And with some of the new features that are coming in, such as level of detail calculations,
Yes.
that would be great for being able to perform them outside of the outside of Tableau Desktop, and it'll really increase the performance of some dashboards if you can make those calculations before bringing the data source into Tableau Desktop. Another question that we've got is, what's the difference between a join and a union, Kate?
So a join is going to grow your data wide. A union is going to grow your data long. So essentially what you're doing is with a union, you're appending the data below, versus a join is going to make more columns going across.
Brilliant. And finally, let's go with all the questions are flooding in suddenly. So we've got a question about how do we handle CSVs? I would assume that's to do with bringing them into Tableau Prep.
Yeah, and that's no problem at all. If you have a CSV, you would just bring that in here as a text file.
Perfect.
Great. And if there are any other questions, feel free, you know, to hit me up on Twitter or LinkedIn if you have questions that we weren't able to get to today.
Yeah, exactly. We'll be able to download all the questions submitted to the Q&A, so we'll try and get as many of them answered as possible.
Great. All right. Thanks,
Brilliant.
everyone.
Thanks, Kate. So now we're going to move over to Josh, who's coming away from a business use case, but where he's used Tableau Prep to analyze some of his own Walmart data. So Josh, hand over to you.
All right, thank you so much. So yeah, I'm going to look today at tackling some Walmart receipt data with Tableau Prep. And it's going to be really interesting because it's all unstructured and poorly structured data. So we're going to see how to work around a couple of interesting issues. Definitely feel free to reach out to me. There's my contact information. I am a principal consultant at Technion Data Solutions, so I get to work with Tableau and Tableau Prep every day with clients. It's a lot of fun, and so I love that. But I'm going to step away from the business use case today and look at a personal use case. I'm a Tableau Zen Master, actually a Hall of Fame Zen Master, so that is an incredible honor from Tableau. I do have a book out. I'm working on learning Tableau 2020, but for now 2019 is the latest edition there. These are my 4 children. Now my wife looked at this slide and she said, well, why am I not pictured there? And I said, well, I could add you. And she said, no. So what am I going to do? But those are my 4 children. I show them for a couple of reasons. First of all, I love them and I love to show their picture. But second, it leads right into my topic, and that is grocery shopping for a large family. So I love Walmart grocery pickup. With 4 kids, I can have them all just stay in the car and get the groceries loaded into the back of the vehicle. This isn't a commercial for Walmart, but I actually love it for a couple of other reasons. Another reason I love it is that back in 2003, I actually was an intern at Walmart Information Systems Division. There I am. I had to look for myself, but I actually worked with the team that was designing the very first iteration of the idea that you could shop online and then pick up groceries. This was for Asda, which was Walmart's uh, British grocery retailer. And so that was a lot of fun. I still wonder if maybe some of my code that I wrote back then lives on today. I doubt it, but who knows? It's kind of interesting to think about. And finally, the reason I love it is that every time I pick up my order, they send me a nice receipt via email. So I collect all of these receipts and I look at it and I think, oh, data. Now, Walmart loves the data that they collect from this because they can analyze all of their customers and behaviors and try to figure out how to sell more. Uh, but I love it because I look at it and think I could figure out my behavior in ordering and maybe find some opportunities for savings or maybe find some opportunities to order healthier alternatives. So I was very fascinated about the opportunity to collect this data, and the only issue is that it's an email, so it's a rather horrible format, and we're going to see that. But because it's an email, I have some options for exporting it. uh, I I'm using Outlook, so I found the import and export option where I can just export to a file. Uh, I can do a CSV file, which sounds great. Sounds like that's a nice structured format. It turns out it's not, but I export the entire folder to a CSV file. Gives me lots of different options for what I want to export, but it turns out the body of the email is the only useful piece of information. If Outlook would allow me to export the date of the email, that would be nice, but it doesn't. The subjects are all the same, from is all the same, to is all the same, so those aren't helpful. Date would be nice, but I'll have to extract that from the body as well. So I export it, and then I take it to Tableau Prep. Now, when I look at the email or the file that's generated, it looks something like this. It does give me the single column of body, and then it takes each email body and puts it in quotes, but it retains the line breaks from the email. So you can see here uh, everything that was in that body of the email is exported. And it's exported as text, so I've got some hyperlinks to the image files and everything. Uh, but if I look at things like the items that I purchased, and that's what I'm really interested in, I'll see that those occur on different lines just because of the way the line breaks were. So I'll get the item name, and then the quantity and the price and then the total, but those are all on separate lines. And that is actually an issue when I go to Tableau Prep, because if I look at that in Tableau Prep, and I'm going to pull that file on here, just drag and drop. Then when I create that clean step, I do indeed get the one field called body, but every line of data becomes a row. And that's not very useful because I've got all of these prices, and then if I go down here, all of these links, I don't even care about those. But somewhere down here, more prices, quantities, and a bunch of junk. But I don't have any way of relating this information to each other. I don't have any way of putting the pieces back together, because as of now, Tableau Prep does not have a way of working across rows of data. Uh, Level of detail will be helpful, but even that won't solve this particular issue. So my solution is to do a little bit of modification to the file first. And the way I do that is I chose to do it with a uh, just a little bit of a script. So this is a PowerShell script in Windows. You could do the same thing with Python. You could do it with any scripting language. But my goal was to remove all of the line breaks and just work with it as a single line of data. So I took that CSV file and then I just exported it to a text file with all the line breaks removed. I did add a field heading so that Tableau Prep would understand that the single line was valid. So I end up with a file that looks like this. It has data as the single column, and then everything else placed on a single line, all of the orders on a single line. So not very structured at all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at how I tackled that. I'm not going to be able to show everything today, so it's not going to be entirely complete, and we're going to move a little bit quickly. But I'll show you the basic idea of how it can work with data that looks like that. So here's that text file. You can see the single field called data, and I'll add the step. I love that Kate mentioned labels. I also find that very useful. Not only handing it off to others, but even myself when I come back a month or two later, I'll never remember what I was trying to do, and even getting started. So here, I just want to split my orders. Right, I've got that's going to be my goal, and I've got this data. And what I want to do is I want to take all of those orders and just split them so that I can identify each separate order. Well, it turns out that that this "we look forward to seeing you again" that appears towards the beginning of each email. So if I could split it on that, that would be great. However, the split option only allows me to split on a single character. So I'll tackle this in a couple of steps. First, I'll create a calculated field, and I'll give it the same name so it actually just replaces the field. And within the field, I'm going to replace that entire string of "we look forward to seeing you again." I'm going to replace that with a vertical bar. My goal is to find a character that doesn't occur anywhere else in the email. And so initially I had to kind of maybe look and search and make sure it didn't, but turns out vertical bar does not. So if I save that, then it will take all of those "we look forward to seeing you again" and replace it with a vertical bar. Now I can use the split function. So I'm going to split the values. I'm going to automatic split might be a little bit problematic because there are so many strange characters. Tableau Prep probably won't know what I'm trying to do. I'm going to do a custom split on that vertical bar, and I'm going to tell it to do all occurrences of that bar. So I'm going to split out everything. And now I get a field for each order. I do get this body, which I no longer need, so I'll remove that. But everything else is actually a separate order. I have to be a little bit careful because the custom split does have a maximum of 150, I believe. I'm nowhere close to that, so I'm okay at 33. I can get rid of the original data field as well. I'll no longer need that. So I've accomplished my goal here of splitting out the orders. Now, if I take all of those and pivot them, I can get to a single order per row. So I started out with a single row of data, but as I work along, I'm going to take all of these and build out more and more rows. So I'm going to take all of these splits, move them over here into the pivot. And this is now my order. Each one of those is an order. I'll remove my pivot names. I don't need that. And I'll make sure to remind myself of what I'm doing here. So I'm just taking orders to rows. And now, on my next step, I find that I do indeed have an order per row, but it's still a lot of just messy data, and I'm going to probably have to look at this in another way besides just a tooltip, because there's just a lot within that single string. So I'm going to copy and paste it, and where I'm going to go with it, I'm going to open up a regex tester, because I'm fairly certain, and it turns out that that the first time I did this, I was right. I am going to have to use some regex to locate some of the data. So just a Google search to it, and then paste in my my order here, so that I can start to look at it and start to think about how I can tackle identifying each item, because that's my next goal. Is now that I've separated out the orders, let's separate out the items. There are some other pieces of data that might be interesting: order numbers, pickup dates and times. I'm going to skip that for now, and what we're going to look for are these. Every item has a description, and then a quantity, a unit price, and a total price. And so if I can do something similar where I maybe place a vertical bar after each item, then I'll be able to split it again. The hard thing is that it's not like the first one where it was just a string that has the same value. Here it could be totally different each time, but it has a pattern. And the pattern that I see here is that I can see a, a, a a dollar value followed by another dollar value uh, with a numeric amount. So I'm going to try to figure out a regex that identifies each of those. So I can look for the dollars, and then a numeric value, so 0 through 9, but including the decimal values. And we can have as many of those as we want. And then I'll take any character. Turns out there are some where it's per pound or something. So I might have some other characters besides spaces. So I'll just do a dot in regex to say any character, and another star to go out as far as we want. And then it has to be followed by another dollar sign. Here, actually, though, I want, let's see. There we go. So dollar question, because I want it to actually not go all the way out, just to the next dollar. So then that dollar, and then another 0 through 9 or decimal, and we'll go all the way to the end of that. So that regex expression has identified each of those patterns, which is the last part of the item. So if I take that and copy it, we can go back to Tableau Prep and use that to split this out. What I'm going to do is create another calculated field. And I want to do a similar kind of thing as I did before, where I replace the value with a single character. But we'll do it a little bit differently here. So instead of just a regular replace, I'll do a regular expression replace. And what that will allow me to do is to use that regular expression, and I'm going to put parentheses around it, because that tells it that that's a capture group. And that's important because when I do the replace, I actually want to put those values back. Those dollar values are important to me. So $1 tells it put those values back, but then follow it up with a vertical bar. And oh, I need a closing quote there. And so when I save that, if everything worked as planned, what I should find when I copy and paste this back, I should find that every one of those now has a vertical bar afterwards, and it does. So I can take that in Tableau Prep and do a split. And again, I'll do a custom split on the vertical bar. I'll do all of them, and I'll split it out again. And so this now became my my order split items. So I've split out each item. I do have this first thing, which is a little bit interesting, because it's got all of the email that came before that very first item. Every single other one is a little bit cleaner. So on this one, I'm going to try to isolate that item. I noticed that that it ends with item quantity or weight price, and then ordered. So again, I can probably split this one out by by replacing price. I'll use the same name just so I don't end up with a lot of fields. And so again, I'll find that string that I want and replace it with a vertical bar. Now I can split this one. This time I only want to split 2, so I'm not going to worry about trying to split all. So I'll split that out. And what that will give me is a couple of things. So I don't need this split anymore. I'll remove that. But now I've got that first item identified, and I'll keep that. This actually has some interesting data in it that I may want to retain. So I'll call that just order data and keep that. And if I look across, I've got just a lot of different things, and we'll figure out what we want to do with those. But each one of those then should be an item. I can get rid of this very first order field and remove that. And then I'll pivot again. So we originally went orders to rows. Now we're going to go even one step further and go to items to rows. So I'll take everything except for that order data field and create a row out of that. So these are now my items. I don't need the pivot names. And I can remind myself what I was doing here. So this is items to rows. And another step. So I've got that order data, which I can look at a little bit later, but I'm going to expand this out. I've got some junk, which I'll clean up later, but I noticed that I do indeed have items. They also have some interesting things at the very beginning, some images of the items. If I cared about those, I could keep them. I really don't, so I'm just going to split this out again. Looks like I could even just use the character that's there, that less than sign, or the bracket. So I'll split that with a custom split, and we'll just do the first 2. So I'll split that off. I will get rid of item now. Remove that. I don't care about what's on the item split 1. That was just a little bit of excess information. But now I'm really starting to get down to the individual items, and I can get rid of some of the extra junk that shows up here. But now I've got the items, and I can look for patterns here where I could split this out. So I've got the item description, the unit price, the quantity, and then the total price. One thing that I notice is that nowhere in the description does it have more than one space, but there are multiple spaces between different these components here. So I might do something similar here. Create a calculated field that replaces more than one space with a vertical bar. And so this is the basic pattern of working with this kind of data. It's trying to identify how to split the data out, how to take it to more than one row, and eventually get to a data set that works really well. So that looks like that has helped. That has split some things, and I can split this out. Another custom split. So it's a lot of just the same steps over and over, but just looking for the patterns that help me identify that. Let me do that again. Undo and custom split. Let's just do three splits there. And so now I've got the item itself. I can do a little bit of cleanup, trim out the spaces. I've got the final price, the line total here. I'll have to split this out a little bit more, but I've got a nice character right there in the middle. At first I thought it was an X, turns out it's not, it's some sort of a special character, but I can split that out using that character. So cut and paste it, split that one out, and now I get the quantity and the unit price. And then finally, I might go back to this this order data and look for all the things I can pull out of here: the order number and the pickup date and time, and all sorts of other things that might be really useful. But ultimately, this data set then is something that I can take to Tableau. And even though it was a really unstructured, unorderly data set in email format, now I can start to do all kinds of really fun and useful analysis on it. I can see what kind of items I'm spending the most on. Uh, I can potentially even alter some of my behavior and look for items that maybe I'm spending way too much on. Now, I don't know if I'll be able to convince a 4-year-old with data that we should stop buying Life cereal, but I might think about how much we've spent on it and think about, are there better alternatives that are even healthier? And all kinds of fun things that I could do in terms of looking at seasonality of prices, and are there times that I should look at buying certain fruit, and who knows, but a lot of really cool data that Tableau Prep allows me to get to. Do we have any questions?
Thanks, Josh. That's a really great demo of how you can clean some really, really horrifically messy data with Tableau Prep. We've had quite a few questions come in, so I'll just give you a few of them to answer. One question that's come in is, can you export other email data, for example, from...
Oops, I'm sorry, it cut out. For example, from...
Sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, the question was, can you export other email data, for example, from Gmail, or does it have to come from Outlook?
No, since I was using Outlook, I found a way that worked for me, but Gmail actually has some great options for exporting email. They've got some built-in options for exporting it. And additionally, I've used IFTTT, which is if this then that, which is a service that connects all kinds of different data sources and creates actions. You can actually set up an action there where every time you got an email from a certain source, it exported it to a Google Sheets or something like that. So lots of different options for exporting data from email, and lots of possibilities.
Great. So something else that's come up is, could prep handle other unstructured data such as JSON?
JSON would be a little bit harder, I think, but you could do something similar. I'm hoping at some point soon that there would be a JSON data source as a possibility. That would definitely make it easier. But just unstructured in general, there are definitely ways of approaching it with Tableau Prep, and that's one thing that I love about Tableau Prep, is that it has so much flexibility built into it, and so much functionality built into it, that I can tackle almost any data source that's out there.
Great. Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, there are some new features that are coming that will make things easier, but most challenges that I tried to tackle with Tableau Prep I've managed to overcome. And final question that's come in, I think you've exposed people there to their first encounter with regex. So some questions that have come in are, for people that are unfamiliar with regex, how would you suggest going about learning it?
It's a great question. So for me, it was just a lot of just Google searching, and then the regex testers are really useful because I don't know regex that well. I'm learning it more and more. There are some great tutorials online. So if you just do a Google search for regex tutorial, you can find those. Some people may prefer videos or books, but personally, I've found just doing a little bit of reading, and then as I try to solve various problems with regex, I'll just do a Google search and find out, okay, well, how do I replace something but retain the original value as well? And and you can find all kinds of things out there.
For sure, and I'd add to that, I think with my experience of regex, it's the same as really learning any coding language. You're not going to watch a few videos and just pick it up straight away. It's a lot of trial and error, and once you come across a scenario where you need to use it, a bit of Googling and trying out different techniques to try and get the solution you want. And over time, as you practice more and more, you'll become more familiar with the language and it starts to become a bit more natural to you. So I think we'll wrap it up there with the questions, Josh. Thank you very much for presenting today.
Thank you.
Great. So up next, we've got Jenny, who's going to show you a great example of using Tableau Prep without any typed calculations and how you can use some of the great built-in features that the devs team have worked on. Over to you, Jenny.
Cool, thank you, Jack. So hi everyone, my name's Jenny, and I also work at the Information Lab, and I'm part of the data school like Jack. I'm DS14, so I'm the 14th cohort, and I was really excited when Jack asked me to speak at the user group today because I love Tableau Prep. I love data prep in general. I think it's really fun to take some messy data and apply a selection of logical techniques to it to take it from messy to clean, and then straight into something like Tableau Desktop to create all your data visualizations. So I've been using Tableau Prep for about a year, and already it's gotten so much better in that time, and there's been a lot of improvements. So I'm really excited for Rahim's talk after this to find out what's coming next. So on to what I'm going to be talking about today. For a lot of beginners, I think that calculations in general, that syntax can be a bit daunting. Certainly when I've been doing training, even an if statement can seem a bit, what's the word? A bit daunting, basically, initially when you you first come across it. So the great thing, I think, one of the great things about Tableau Prep is that you can do so much of that cleaning without even writing any calculations at all. So what I'll talk about today is just a little bit about self-service data prep and why it's important and why more and more people should be getting into it. It's kind of inspired by a blog written by Carl Alchin and Jonathan Allenby last year. I've got a link to that blog at the end, and you'll receive all of these slides. So do go away and read that after this user group because it's awesome. And then I'll be talking a little bit about prep and data, which Jack introduced at the beginning. And that's actually where the example that I'm going to show you, where we can clean up some data with just a few clicks, comes from. So in fact, if you have two screens, then you could always have week 42 of 2019 open, and then you could follow along, but no pressure, you can just watch. So let's talk about self-service data prep. So traditionally, I guess, a lot of data prep was done by IT. It would look something like this. Now, to most beginners, that's going to look quite scary initially. First of all, where's the data? It's not really clear, if you're not familiar with the syntax, what even the field names are. So that's why, I guess, traditionally, a lot of these SQL queries, they'd be written by IT. The data analysts would just get an extract in Excel probably, and they'd have to manually sort of copy and paste parts of different tables together, manually delete rows, delete columns, all that sort of tedious work. And then the next month they get more extracts from IT that they'd have to clean all over again and apply the same steps. But hey, in Excel, there's no record of what steps you took. So that's all quite boring, manual, repetitive, prone to errors, and that sort of thing. But with a tool like, say, Tableau Prep, then the difference is clear. Already you can sort of see the logic of how you go from your start on the left to the end on the right. And I know that Kate and Josh have talked about renaming your steps and how great that is, but Tableau Prep helps you out anyway. It gives quite logical names like clean one. Okay, there must be some data cleaning going on here. Join one. Okay, you must be bringing two data sources together at this point, and so on and so forth. So whilst it's great to rename things as you're going, Tableau Prep's also trying to help you out and give a complete beginner some idea what's going on. And one other thing that Tableau Prep is great at, it gives you little recommendation light bulbs, which I noticed a couple of times as Kate was building her workflow, and I was very curious what Tableau Prep would be suggesting. And I think this is something that's only going to get better and better as the tool grows. So just a quick summary of why self-service data prep. It's basically all about empowering analysts to be able to have more time away from having to do boring, manual, repetitive tasks and actually get to be getting up close to the data. Because I often find when I'm cleaning data in Tableau Prep, for example, I'm also analyzing it as I go and I'm building out the ideas of what I'm going to then do with it, much more than if I'm just staring at the numbers in Excel. So I guess if you're feeling like, yay, data prep, how do I get started? Then there's actually a great resource available for everyone, which is called Prep in Data. It was, if you may have heard from Jack earlier, but I'll just go over it again. So it started last year by Carl and Jonathan, and it started off just as a weekly challenge. So you get some mock data that you can have a desired output that you've got to reach from the messy input, and then each week you can have a go. There'll be solutions, there'll be people posting on Twitter. So if you get stuck, you can easily get help with how to go about solving the problem. Whereas if you were just trying to learn on your own with your company's data, obviously it's less easy to get help because you can't just be posting it online because that's not very secure. But actually, like, since that start of Prep and Data last year of just being challenges, it's grown into something much more. And now there's also how-to posts. So it's a real place to go to help you get started with Tableau Prep and with data prep in general, really, to learn and improve your skills. And I mean, I'm still learning as well, as from Kate's talk earlier with the wildcard for the pivoting. I didn't know that before, so thanks, Kate. But back to Prep and Data. Tom and I also joined the team this year, as Jack mentioned at the start, which is awesome, and I'm looking forward to that too. But let's show you the website rather than just talking about it. So if we go to, then this is the homepage for Tableau Prep, and you can see already there's a how-to post, there's a challenge, there's a solution. It's all very easy to navigate. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to go to the challenge section here, and we're going to week 42, because this is a challenge where you're not allowed to use any typed calculations at all. And the challenge comes from a fake soap company, Chin and Beard Subsco, and they are trying to work out where they should open their next store. So one of the inputs is all about store locations, the potential sales that store will have, and the cost of that store. So we're going to do some analyses to find out, to narrow that list down a little bit. We've also got another table, which just has the currencies and the conversion rates. So that suggests that already, as we've got two inputs, we're probably going to want to join them together at some point. And so our first step with this challenge is going to be to do some cleaning and then some joining. And then we've seen here that some of the city and country names are spelt wrong. So we're instructed by this challenge to just exclude them. There are other ways that you could clean the data, but in this way, we're just going to exclude them. Then on to the more analytical part, sorry. So we've got, for each zip code that a store could be in, we want to have only the store that will have the most sales, which makes sense. And we also want to eliminate any stores that have a higher cost than their potential sales. And finally, what we're trying to get to is 10 rows and 7 columns. So we'll bear that in mind. Cool, so let's have a look at our 2 inputs again, just to show you that they are the same as what we just had in the browser. So this is the currency conversion table here, which is exactly the same. Great, and it's also looking quite clean, this one here. It doesn't look like we're going to have to do any cleaning to it at all. Whereas if we come up here, then we can see that we've got 20 rows, 4 columns at the moment. And we can see some of those problems in the location where we've got spelling errors of New Yorkie, for example. And we can also see some other issues with our data. But let's start with location, right? We've already seen in some of the demos about splitting the location. So we've got city and country in the same field at the moment. But if we're using this data source in Tableau desktop, for example, then we're definitely going to want to be able to have country and city as different fields because we'll use them in different ways. So we definitely want to have those separated off. So we're going to go to the 3 dots and split those off. Let's give the automatic split a go, you never know. Okay, it's only given us back the city at the moment. So we've got 1 extra field here, but we actually want the country as well. So let's go and undo that change that it made. So we just pop out the little changes menu at the side, and we're just going to delete that change. We don't want that to happen. So we're back to our 4 rows that we had before. So this time we'll do a custom split. So our separator is a comma, because that's the thing separating our city from our country. And we're going to choose all fields here because we want everything before the comma, everything after the comma. Awesome. Now that's nice and split in 2 for us. I'm going to get rid of this location field because we just don't need it anymore because we've got all the information over here instead. So I'm going to right click and remove it that way. Cool. Now, one of our little recommendation icons has popped up, which is exciting. So let's see what that recommendation is. Okay, it's recommending that we change this country, this field that we know to be a country field, into a geographic role of having country. That's helpful because when we take it into Tableau Desktop, we can then use it to start building our maps and that sort of thing right away. And also, that's quite useful as well. Changing it to a country region has meant that this little exclamation marks appeared where we've got spelling errors, and we've been told to exclude those rows. So if we just click on them and hold down Control if you're on a Windows, probably Command I think if you're on a Mac, then we highlight those 3 rows that have those spelling errors in the country field, and we can just exclude those. So now we've only got 17 rows where we had 20 before. And we don't have a recommendation now to do the same for city, but it makes logical sense that we would do that too. So the way that we do that is by clicking on the data type, which at the moment is a string, but then we come down to the data role and we can change that geographical data role to be a city. And again, we've got those little exclamation marks, so we can exclude all those spelling errors, which are no good to anyone basically. So that's 4 rows that we're excluding. So we go down to 13 rows in total. I'm just going to quickly rename these fields to city and country, just so that that makes more sense going forwards. And why not? Let's preview it in Tableau Desktop. On any step, you can click this option and it'll open up Tableau Desktop for you. And we can see that little globe symbol next to our city and our country. And if we just double click on that in Tableau, then there we are. Yeah, there's the United States, there's Mexico. Awesome. So that's kind of the reason that we would bother making those changes, just so that when we come into Tableau Desktop later, it's all a bit smoother. So great, it's looking like our locations are a lot cleaner now. So let's move on to the other fields that we have in our data. So we've got potential sales and store cost. And we can see at the moment that these have the actual values and the currency in the same field. Again, we're going to run into issues with that because if we want to do any kind of aggregation with this number, so say we wanted to add together some store sales at some point, then it's not going to be possible because it's just a string field at the moment. It's not a numeric field. So we're going to want to split these 2 fields up in the same way that we split up our location earlier. I'm ever the optimist, so I'm going to try the automatic split again. And look, it's actually worked this time. Lovely. I'll do the same for the store cost as well. So then I'll just delete these two columns because we no longer need these fields because we have all the information split out over here. Now it kind of looks like we've got a duplicated field here with the currencies, but how do I double check that? I mean, I can eyeball it down here, but equally, I can click on the currency of the store cost at the moment, and you can see that where it's Mexican here, it's Mexican there. Where it's US dollars here, it's US dollars there. We can see as well in the tooltip, 100% highlighted. So that means that these are duplicated fields, so we don't need both of them. So I'll remove one of the fields and name this one currency. Now I'll just clean these titles up as well, get rid of the split one to rename it. And then it's looking like this data set is looking quite clean now, which is cool. And we can go on to sort of step 2 of the challenge, which is joining together these two tables. So we'll just pick up the step from our currency table, join it up to the sheet 1 bit of the flow, and Tableau Prep's very clever and has automatically recognized that we can join those two tables together on currency, which is awesome. We've gone up to 8 fields where we had 6 in our previous step. So we have 6 fields here, 2 fields there. But because we're joining a currency, then that kind of means we've got a duplicated currency field in there at the moment. So if we click on Show List View, then we can see currency, and then Tableau Prep adds in like a -1 to say that this is like the same field name, but duplicated. So we'll just get rid of this one because we don't need it. Awesome. So now we're coming on to, so we've done 2 out of the 4 requirements. Now we want for every zip code, we want to have only the store that has the maximum sales. So we're going to use an aggregate step here, where we're going to group by the potential store location, which is our zip code. And we're going to return the maximum store sales. So now we can see that where we had 13 rows before, we've now actually only got 12. So that means that there's definitely one zip code that had 2 stores. So we're going to need to find a way to filter that out. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to join back our data onto itself. So we're just going to take the aggregate step, move it backwards in the flow, and join it back to where we were from before. And again, Tableau Prep, very clever, has chosen the store potential sales to join on. And we can see that that's what we want because we can see that there's one excluded row here. And if we click on that, then we can see that it's probably in this location, this San Francisco, that there were multiple stores. So we're just not going to worry about that. And we've excluded it, which is great. So now we've only got 2 more rows that we need to get rid of. Because if you remember, the final output had 10 rows. So that's great. Let's add another step and just think about the next step. So the next step is we want to exclude any store that has a higher store cost than its potential sales. Now this kind of screams out for a calculation, doesn't it? But that's the challenge of this challenge. You can't use a calculation. So how else can we exclude rows? Well, we've seen it as we've joined back here, that sometimes joining can exclude rows. So let's try that again. Let's try out a join. And if Tableau's already guessed, it's saying maybe you want to join on the potential store location, on the zip code. Okay, yeah, I agree with that. But also, I want the store cost to be less than the potential store potential sales, which is great because now we can see 2 fields are being excluded. 2 rows, sorry, not fields. So now we're down to 10 rows, which is exactly what we wanted. And if we click on here, for example, then we can see that that store cost is definitely bigger than that potential sales, as is the case for this row here. So great, it's done what we want it to do. The only thing left to do now is to get rid of a load of extra fields because I hadn't been doing that as I was going along. So anything with like a -1 or -2 or -3, that can just go. because it's all just duplications. And therefore, now we have 7 fields and 10 rows. Tableau Prep has chosen now to stop caching, but that's fine. Just trust me that there are 10 rows here, and once you get rid of the columns, there are also 7 fields. So we have solved that challenge, which is awesome. And just to come back to the slides, here are these additional resources which will be shared with you after the user group. We've got that blog that I mentioned, which is really great on self-service data prep. We've got a link to prepping data if you should want to get involved in the challenges. And in fact, if you want a challenge that's similar to this one, where you can't use any calculated fields at all, then 2019 week 26 is a great place to start, or even this week's one, 2020 week 8. So please get involved and tweet us, and we'd love to see that. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Jenny. That was really great. I think it's a great showcase of some of the features that are built into Tableau Prep. When people first start looking at a messy data source, I think when you put it in a software like that, all you want to do is just click on the rows and group them together, and it just brings things together that you think would happen naturally. So I think you've showcased that really well. One big question that came in, which I believe is to do with the prepping data challenge itself that you chose, but a lot of people were asking why you excluded some of the misnamed cities, because then you lose some data. But am I right in saying that that's one of the requirements of the challenge?
Yeah, sorry, perhaps I skimmed over that as I was on the web page, but yeah, that was one of the requirements of the challenge. I remember when I first attempted this, I tried to use Tableau Prep's grouping functionality to sort of get around those spelling errors, which it does very well, but then I realized that that wasn't what the challenge had asked you to do. So you've got to read the challenges carefully.
Perfect, that's what I thought. Someone's got a question about data prep challenges themselves, and as you've recently joined the team, they've asked how long on average do you think someone should spend trying to tackle a challenge?
Oh, it really depends, I would say. Some weeks they are nice and quick, but sometimes they are absolutely big monsters. I think that Jonathan Allenby's ones are notorious for being quite complex and with multiple steps. But I think there are a lot of quick ones out there as well for you to have a go at. So I would say there's no set time of how long it takes. But you can kind of get an idea of how long it will take based on the post itself. There'll be like a number of bullet points of steps you should take, and generally like the fewer bullet points, the shorter the challenge.
I'd agree with that. There are definitely challenges out there for all levels of Tableau Prep users. Some of them that Jonathan, I think it was week 3 of this year that Jonathan put out, was really quite intense, whereas some others are definitely accessible to all Tableau Prep users, I'd say, even if you're opening up the tool for one of the first time. And finally, a bit more of a technical question. Can you explain the difference between splitting all and splitting on a specified number?
Yeah, so splitting all just means that, I'm probably not going to explain this very well, but say in our example earlier where you had city, comma, country, that's definitely going to make sure that anything either side of that separator, that is the comma, will come back. And therefore, say you get new data in later, maybe it has something lower down than a city. Maybe it has the state in the middle. So your data changes and you have city, comma, state, comma, country. Then if you've got the all selected, then it'll still retain all of those separate bits of information. So it'll create 3 new columns, whereas before it was creating 2 new columns. Whereas if you've chosen, say, if you selected to select just the first 2 bits of that information where your data's changed, then you'd only have the city and the state, if that makes sense. So it's just kind of hard coding a number in versus keeping it a bit more dynamic.
That's great. I think you've done a very good job there of explaining it without doing a visual demo.
I did a lot with my hands, but
Can't see that.
No.
All right, thank you very much, Jenny. That's great.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack.
So finally, we have Rahim who leads up the Tableau Prep development team. He's been busy throughout all of those talks, answering loads of questions on the Q&A, but now you get to hear what he's got to say himself. So, Rahim.
Perfect. Thank you, Jack. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for taking the time for joining us on this WebEx, and thank you, Jack, and everybody else for participating and organizing. These type of events is really encouraging for me and my team. You know, it gives us a reason to get up every day and do what we do. So thank you very much. I just wanted to start with a brief introduction about myself. I've been now on, this is my 7th year now at Tableau. In all 7 years, I've been working in the prep, managing and connecting data space. In fact, I was part of the original team that built the existing data tab in Tableau Desktop. Eventually, when we realized that there was a greater need, we transitioned the team to work on prep as a standalone product a few years ago. So we've seen some really great use cases today, but I'm going to spend more time just talking about what the journey was that led us to building prep, why we built it, what some of our design principles were. And I have a quick short demo of something that's coming out that you'll like. So before I specifically focus on prep, I just want to talk about data management. And those that don't know, data management is a new add-on offering that we have as of last year. And why do we go there? Well, what we've realized, and mostly from our customers and doing market research, that people need to be able to prepare, trust, and govern their data before they can analyze it. And we all know Tableau is great at analysis, but there was a gap in our platform offering, which we're hopefully trying to fill with these, with what we have in data management. And what does that really mean? Right, so we have sort of 3 pillars there. We've got prep, builder, we've got conductor, which builder is what you just saw. Conductor is the operational arm of builder. So once you've done prepping, you can publish it to the server, you can schedule it, and then all your visits that hang off those data sources will always be updated. And then Tableau Catalog is our latest offering, which lets you see what's there. Now, why did we do this? You know, in the market, we saw a lot of different point solutions for cataloging, preparation, etc. And independently, they're all useful. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to bring a cohesive sort of solution to the market, so you could remain in the flow of your analysis, starting from prepping to discovering to connecting to building your visualizations. So with that, I'll move to Tableau Prep. So most of our customers have data preparation problems. How do I know that? Because you told us. And we talked to a lot of customers, business users who use Tableau to analyze data, and they struggle getting data ready, and you know, because it's in messy shape and it's spread across many different sources. So at the inception of the Tableau Prep idea, about 3 years ago or so, we audited the market and we interviewed users who had a tool and users that didn't have a tool and that use Excel or clean data by hand. And we found that the set of users that did not have a tool were underserved. And our initial goal was to do better for those customers. With this information, we formed 2 hypotheses about data prep. Can we make data prep as simple as building a viz by making it visual, direct, and smart? And can we make it simple to keep your data fresh even when it's changing? To date, we focused on making preparation simple, applying all the knowledge into this page, which we as a company had developed building Tableau itself. So our goal is to build the best self-service prep product in the market. And with that, I'll talk about a couple of our core design, 3 of our core design principles. The first one is visual and direct. And you've already seen a bunch of these demos with some of these concepts that were introduced. And I'll quickly just focus on the profile pane. So when we first built this, we wanted things to be visual. We wanted users to be able to see when they made changes, what the impact of those changes was going to be to their model. And what we didn't realize is how impactful this was going to be. In fact, 2 months after launch, I was talking to a customer who's in the health data aggregation business. They would spend millions of dollars buying data, and then they would spend 3 months discovering what's in there. With Prep, they were able to shorten that down to 2 days, because with the profile pane view, you can see what your outliers are. You can see where things are being aggregated. You can see what the shape of your data is. This is very powerful, and it's part of our core concept. And then you saw the flow pane, which showed you the graph. Our designers took inspiration from a subway map model, where you can see on the left where you started. You can see with each of the step nodes, which you can click on them and get detail about each of those step nodes. And on the right, you see where you end. And then finally, things like the join pane, the union experiences, these transformations are hard to reason about at times. So we build a very expressive node just to give you information about how things are being put together. And one of the biggest learnings about the join node, for example, we rewrote that experience through the alpha beta phase of our product 3 times, because the first 3 iterations focused on, when you make a join, what's in your table. And then after customer interviews and feedback, we realized people not only cared about what's in their join, they also care about what's not in their join, what's falling out. Right? In hindsight, that makes sense. You're preparing data, you want to know, why doesn't it match? So that's some of the thought we put in to build some of these very rich experiences. So that's our first design principle, visual and direct. Second one is about smarts. We want the system or the app to have enough capability that users don't have to do repetitive tasks again and again. And we're just scratching the surface here. We've built a bunch of features already around certain algorithms for spelling and pronunciation that allows you to group in a smart way. We've got our data roles, which lets you that lets you set specific types and identify columns of data. We have our recommendation engine that helps you identify things like, is this a certain type? Is this an address? Is this a date? And so on and so on. And this is a huge focus for us moving forward. We'll be doing a bunch of work here to make the app even smarter. And the third design principle is that it has to be integrated with Tableau. And so we've leveraged some of the same Tableau core framework that had already been developed. So we use the same data connector, we use the same calculation language, we leverage Hyper as a caching engine as our output engine. You can directly open in Tableau, and of course you can publish and then schedule everything in Tableau server. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about our release cadence and some of the telemetry that we get and what we do with that information. So we launched in April 2018, and we've been shipping at about a monthly pace since then. So I haven't included the last 3 releases in this slide yet, but we've approximately released 105 new features so far. This is really exciting for us because this is a new model within the team. We run our own release processes, we do our own validation, and the model is, we don't have sustaining. Everything moves to the new version. The new version is always a superset of the previous version. Our investment in this area is not slowing down. We're going to continue to push, and we'd love to hear all the feedback. Now, when I present this slide, 9 times out of 10, people ask me the same question: how is adoption going? Given that prep is moving so fast, faster than the rest of the product line, what is the guidance to the user and how has it been working? Well, I'm happy to say that our telemetry shows that adoption has been doing really well. You know, we're being used all over the world, more so in some places than others, but it's been really good. We know that there are, and our guidance and what our telemetry also shows is that more than half of our user base upgrades to the last 2 latest releases as soon as they're released. We know there are still some kinks when we need to work out with versioning and how the builder aligns with server versions, but that is on our roadmap to address. And then speaking of telemetry, we have some more telemetry around what type of connectors are being used. And this is worldwide, and this is over the last 2 years. And you can see it's the usual suspects: Excel, Text, SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, Postgres, etc. Another interesting the data point is what operations do users perform most? And you get answers all over the place, but it's interesting insight. You could see our telemetry shows us that removing columns along with renaming and adding columns is by an order of magnitude the largest operations people do. Now this is sort of this is a little bit misleading because everything in blue is a columnar operation. Therefore, of course, the events that we collect are going to be a lot larger. The colored columns where you see the orange and the gray and the light green, those are transformations. Those are tabular operations. So containers means you have a clean step. Remap is where you're actually cleaning the data itself, and then joins, of course, is the most widely used transformations. And a quick slide on a customer feedback. Freddie Mac used to have a 45-day reporting process, which they were able to bring down to 5 minutes using Prep. And it wasn't a simple flow. It was really large. They had more than 16 joins and 14 aggregates. It looks something like this. Now, moving on to just talking briefly about some of our future directions. So these are a few things we announced at conference last November. Some of the big things that we're working on right now. With Prep web authoring that will come sometime this year, this brings our vision of data preparation anywhere to fruition. Write to database is our topmost requested enterprise feature. It deepens the impact of preparation where you can look to fix your source more effectively downstream. Then we launched Tableau Catalog late last year, and we're looking to deepen integration with Prep with metadata integration. And visual shaping, which I'll quickly give you a demo here shortly, is a new innovative area where we've been experimenting with, with some new paradigms around visual LODs and ranking, etc. And then more reusability. We've been incrementally adding features to foster more reusability within Prep flows, but there's more innovation coming in that space. And then with that, I will quickly give you a demo of the analytic capabilities. Those that were in the 2020.1 beta program have probably seen some of this already. This is not out yet, but should be out soon. So I have a data set here of 30 days of stock data for Apple, Salesforce, and Google. And the first thing I want to do is I want to take a look at finding, using fixed LOD, the lowest price per ticker. Now I could write a calculation. I could write a fixed LOD calculation here. And it's relatively straightforward to do with the folks that are familiar with fixed LODs in Prep. But we wanted to go a step further and make it more visual. And you can do that by just clicking on this, and it pops out this our flyout menu. I can already see that it's on the column price. We're looking for minimum value, and I want to group by ticker. And then right away, you can already see that it's picked, it's can see it, and it's all visual, it's right in front of Similarly, if I wanted to add rank and then rank those values within the stock ticker, I can do the same thing. I can go in and say, I can go into the date column and use the same new menu, click on rank, and then choose the ticker, and then it gives you all the rank right here, and you can visually inspect it. So we want to bring this paradigm to every part of the app and try and simplify a lot of these complicated pieces. So I know I'm running over time, so I'll stop here, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Rahim. It's really great to get an insight into how PrEP is being adopted around the world and which connectors are being used most commonly. And right at the end there, the demonstration of some of the new features that are coming, such as rank and LOD, is going to save people a lot of time in their flows. There are workarounds to achieve this at the moment, but especially for a rank, it can be quite complicated and put a lot of stress on the workflow. So a couple of questions. I do realize that you may not be able to answer some of these due to disclosure, but one that's come up quite a lot is there a plan to allow PrEP to connect to Salesforce objects?
Yes. We're working on a Salesforce. So we're working on the Salesforce connector, and then as we learn more about what our integrations are going to be with all the different Salesforce assets, we'll release more information, but that is a priority for us.
Right.
So I'm not directly answering your question, but I'm saying it is important.
Yeah, of course, I realize that may be your way for answering a lot of these questions. Something that came up, which I believe is due to the current releases. So someone's asked, can PrEP be a newer version versus desktop and server? Because I believe at the moment with PrEP, we're on 2020.1, whereas with desktop and server, we're still on 19.4.
Right, that's correct. So the next release will be 2020.1.3, which will coincide with the 2020.1 main release. And we're fairly close to that going out.
Perfect. I'll give you one more. There are loads and loads of questions here, and I know you've been answering throughout the entire session. So there's a few about scheduling PrEP workflows and PrEP Conductor. How can people go about that and access PrEP Conductor?
Okay, yeah. PrEP Conductor is part of our new data management offering, as I mentioned. I would reach out to your account reps to get information about how to access it. It's available for on-prem, online, and for Bridge. And there's a lot of, I posted a few links with material on how to get started.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Rahim. It's been a great talk. I was particularly excited for that, to see what's coming.
Excellent.
Great.
And then, you guys have my information. If you feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter, and I'll help as I can.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So just to wrap things up, a couple of learning resources here for you if you want to get if you want to develop your Tableau prep skills further. We've already touched on prepping data, but there are loads of interactive tutorials on the Tableau website. If you go to this link, which is to the Tableau website, and then you've got the on-demand training and getting started with Tableau prep. There's loads of follow along tutorials on there, which will get you familiar with some of the basics of Tableau prep and move you on to some of the more advanced capabilities. And then finally, alongside the prepping data challenges, there's also a how-to blog. So these typically answer questions you may have, which is how to do an advanced join, or how to union, or how to rename my field. So you can follow along to that if you've got any further questions. And so, yeah, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you for listening, everyone. It's been great to have so many people on board, and there's been such big interest for this session. If you want to reach out to me, a lot of you have my email. So that's jack.parry@theinformationlab.co.uk, or if you reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn, I'm more than happy to advise people or answer questions. As I said, these are going to become regular sessions. So if you know anyone that would be interested in speaking, or if you've been in a session and you think you'd like to present yourself in the future, then please reach out to me and get in touch. And yeah, I'd just like to say a big thank you to all the presenters today, to Kate, Josh, Jenny and Rahim for getting their pieces together and giving you a showcase of what Prep's capable of. I hope you will have a good rest of your day, and this recording will be published tomorrow morning on Tableau's forums and on their YouTube channel. Thanks, everyone.